I'm sorry. You hear it all the time, right? It's probably one of the first phrases anyone learns in English. Seems pretty universal. But here's something kind of interesting to think about. What if fluent native English speakers actually, well, often avoid saying I'm sorry? Yeah, it sounds a bit weird, doesn't it? Because so many learners, maybe you too, find themselves using I'm sorry for, gosh, almost everything. Like, you're a bit late, you need to cut in, ask a question, maybe even when something happens that isn't your fault at all. The trouble isn't the phrase itself, obviously, it's just using it so much, it can sort of subtly make you sound a bit unsure, maybe less confident than you actually are.
hmm And that's where it gets really fascinating because there are these cultural layers underneath, psychological ones too,
Mm.
especially in places like the US or the UK. How you apologize, or crucially, how you don't, can send some pretty strong signals. Overdoing the sorry thing. It can sometimes, believe it or not, make you seem less authoritative, particularly, at work.
Less authority. How so?
Well, think about it. If you're constantly apologizing, you're sort of, linguistically,
Hmm?
putting yourself in a slightly lower position. It can subtly undermine your standing. And honestly,
Yeah.
it can just confuse people sometimes. Like, wait, who actually messed up here?
Ah, okay, so it muddies the waters.
Exactly. Which is why native speakers often, without even thinking about it, draw on a much wider range of phrases. They're aiming for politeness, sure, but also clarity and emotional intelligence, all without just defaulting to sorry.
Okay, right. So this is deeper than just swapping words. It's about the intention behind the words. So, our mission today in this deep dive is to kind of unpack why I'm sorry isn't always your best bet. And more importantly, explore some really useful, natural, confident alternatives. Think of it as a shortcut to understanding how these little language choices shape how people see you. We'll look at everything from, formal apologies to showing empathy, taking responsibility clearly, even disagreeing politely without having to say sorry first. So we often grab I'm sorry just out of habit, don't we? But like you said, there are times when something more precise really lifts your communication. Let's start with maybe those slightly more formal, professional moments. How do we handle those without just saying sorry?
Right. Okay, so in a formal setting, maybe an email to a client or a more serious meeting, my apologies works really well. It's crisp, it's respectful, it has a kind of gravitas maybe that I'm sorry might lack in that
Okay,
context.
Stas, I like that.
Yeah. So for instance, my apologies for the delay in responding. It acknowledges an oversight,
Yeah.
definitely, but it feels controlled,
Yeah.
professional,
Huh.
not overly emotional or like you're admitting some deep personal failing.
I get that. Yeah, it sounds more like acknowledging a process issue than like begging forgiveness. That's a useful distinction, especially in business. Okay, what about the small stuff? The everyday oops moments, like you accidentally bump someone's chair or make a tiny mistake.
Ah, yes, those little slips where honestly no real harm was done or it was clearly just an accident. For those, something simple like, oh, I didn't mean to is often perfect.
I didn't mean to.
Yeah, like, oops, I didn't mean to step on your foot.
Yeah.
It acknowledges what happened, but frames it clearly as unintentional. You're not taking on huge amounts of guilt for something minor. It avoids sounding, overly sorry for a tiny thing.
Right, and navigating crowds, or when you need to interrupt someone who's busy, I hear sorry constantly then.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's a prime spot for, pardon me, or excuse me. These aren't really apologies in the same way. They're more like signals. You're signaling a brief, necessary intrusion. You're not expressing regret for simply needing to get past or ask something.
So, pardon me, is this seat taken? Or, excuse me, could I just squeeze by?
Exactly. It sounds confident, but still respectful of their space or attention. It's about being courteous, not apologetic for your basic needs.
That makes sense. Assertive but polite. Okay, and sticking with politeness, what if you have caused a delay? Maybe you kept someone waiting, but you don't want to sound like you're groveling about it.
Right. This one's actually quite clever, I think. It's about shifting the frame. So instead of the default, I'm sorry for the delay, try, thanks for your patience.
Ooh, I like that. Thanks for your patience.
Yeah. So thanks for your patience. I just needed to wrap a call.
Mm.
It immediately changes the dynamic. You're not focusing on your lateness or fault. You're actually highlighting their positive quality, their patience. It builds goodwill, feels more confident, and less like you're making excuses.
That is a powerful reframe. Focus on their understanding, not your mistake. Puts the positive spotlight on them. Clever. Now, what if it genuinely is your fault? You messed up and you need to own it clearly. No ambiguity.
Okay, when you need to take clear ownership, be direct. That was my fault.
It's as simple as that.
Simple as that.
Wow.
You're right, I missed that detail in the report. That was my fault. It's concise, it shows accountability, it actually signals competence in a way,
How so?
because it suggests you recognize the error, you understand it, and you're implicitly ready to deal with it. Rather than just expressing this vague regret, it's about taking control, even of the mistake.
Right, okay. Direct and accountable. But what if the mistake is bigger, more serious, and you really feel quite bad about it? You want to convey that weight.
Yeah. For those more significant situations, or maybe trust has been damaged or the impact is serious, that's when something like please forgive me might be appropriate. It carries a much heavier emotional weight than I'm sorry.
Definitely sounds more intense.
It is. It's really an appeal for reconciliation. You're acknowledging hurt. You're asking for the relationship to be repaired. Please forgive me. I truly didn't understand how much this meant to you. It's for breaches, not just blips.
That really does convey a different level of seriousness. Seeking forgiveness, not just understanding. Okay, let's shift gears slightly. What about empathy? Someone shares bad news, they're upset. The automatic response is often, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Is there a better way?
That's a great question because I'm sorry to hear that while well-intentioned can sometimes sound a bit automatic, maybe even hollow if said too often.
Like a script.
Kind of. Instead, the focus should perhaps be on validating their feelings,
Yeah.
showing you understand or are trying to. So maybe try, I understand how you feel, if you genuinely do. Or perhaps safer, that sounds really difficult, or that must be so hard. And maybe add, I'm here if you need anything. It's about connection, about acknowledging their pain, rather than apologizing for their misfortune, which can be a bit confusing, logically.
That's a really powerful distinction. Showing support and understanding, not just saying sorry for their situation and looking back, reflecting on something you did wrong in the past.
Yeah, when you're thinking about a past mistake, something like, I shouldn't have done that is quite effective.
Example.
Like looking back, I shouldn't have raised my voice in that meeting. That wasn't appropriate. It's honest. It shows self-awareness that you've reflected on it. It demonstrates growth.
Okay.
Really.
And if you did something that caused harm, but you absolutely didn't mean to, how do you make that clear without overdoing the apology?
Right. Intent versus impact. If the harm was truly unintended, clarifying with that was unintentional can be helpful. For example, oh, I didn't realize my comment would come across that way. That was completely unintentional. It addresses the impact on the other person, which is important, but clarifies your intent wasn't malicious,
Yeah.
helps manage perceptions, keeps things respectful.
Got it. Okay. And finally, for really serious stuff, maybe in writing, in a business context, is there something even stronger than my apologies?
Yes, for quite serious matters, especially formal or written ones, I regret that, or we regret to inform you, carry significant weight.
More formal than My apologies.
Generally, yes. It feels a bit more substantial. I regret missing the deadline. I understand the impact, and I'll ensure it doesn't happen again. It conveys seriousness, acknowledges consequences, and often implies a commitment to rectification, more than just a simple sorry.
That reminds me actually of this intern we had, Emily. She forgot to attach this really important file to an email she sent to a client. Classic mistake, right?
Oh, yeah. Easily done.
So her first instinct was just, oh my God, I'm so sorry. But her mentor suggested something different. She ended up writing something like, my apologies for that oversight. The file is attached now. Thank you for your understanding.
Nice. Clean, professional.
Exactly. And the client was totally fine, replied really nicely, praised her quick correction, actually. It wasn't just about the word she used instead of sorry. It felt like she handled it. She took control, acknowledged the slip up, fixed it. It turned a potential oh no moment into just a minor admin fix.
That's a perfect example. And it ties back to what we mentioned earlier, the psychology of it. When you over-apologize, especially at work, you risk projecting maybe less capability
Yeah.
or even sounding a bit submissive, which isn't usually the goal.
Right.
Native speakers often pick these other phrases because instinctively or not, they get that these alternatives convey politeness, sure, but also clarity, emotional intelligence, and this is key, they help maintain that perception of competence.
Okay, so let's maybe look at a few more quick scenarios just to really hammer home that mindset shift. Minor work mistake again. Instead of, oh gosh, I'm sorry, I totally forgot about the 10 a.m. meeting. Maybe try, thanks for your patience. I completely missed the time slot. That's on me. I'll get the notes and catch up immediately. See, it's responsible. It offers a solution. It's problem solving, not just feeling bad.
Exactly. Or replying late to a message. Instead of, so sorry for the late reply,
A trio, right?
we do. But consider, thanks so much for your patience. I was traveling, but I'm back now and looking at this. Gratitude instead of guilt. It just feels better, builds more rapport.
Yeah, it really does shift the feeling. Okay, needing to jump into a discussion.
Yeah, ditch the... Sorry. Can I just add something quickly? Try a confident but polite... Pardon me, could I jump in here for a moment? Or,
Oh, yeah.
excuse me, may I add something? Much more professional, especially in meetings.
Respectful of the flow, but still assertive.
Uh-huh.
And disagreeing. This is a big one. People often start with, sorry, but.
Oh, definitely no need for that. You don't need to apologize for having a different opinion.
Right.
Just state it. Clearly, politely. Actually, I see that a bit differently. Here's my thinking. Or, that's an interesting point, however. I'd like to suggest an alternative approach. Strong, clear, respectful, no apology required.
Love that. Zero apology needed for thinking differently. And empathy again. Instead of just, I'm sorry you're going through that.
Maybe something like, wow, that sounds incredibly tough. I'm really thinking of you, or I can only imagine how difficult that must be. I'm here to listen if you want to talk.
Yeah.
It feels more genuine, more connected. You're validating their experience, not just saying the sorry word.
Okay, I remember hearing about this guy, Jason. He had a Zoom job interview from a cafe.
Right. Risky.
Tell me about it. Anyway, his internet drops. He reconnects maybe 3 minutes late, totally flustered.
Right.
And he starts with, oh, I'm so sorry I'm late. My Wi-Fi here is terrible.
Yeah.
Understandable, but maybe not the most professional opening.
Right. Puts the focus immediately on a problem and an apology.
Exactly. Now, imagine if he'd taken a breath and said something like, thank you so much for your patience. I experienced a brief connection issue, but I'm fully connected and ready now.
Totally different vibe.
Completely. Suddenly, Jason sounds calm, in control, professional, like he can handle a little glitch. It just shows how much those word choices matter in shaping perception.
It really underscores the whole point, doesn't it? Your words actively create the impression you make.
Okay, so we've got this great toolkit of alternatives now. But it feels just as important to flag those times when learners, maybe even native speakers sometimes, apologize when there's absolutely no need.
Yes, this is huge. Like saying, sorry, I don't understand. It can subtly make you sound less capable than you are.
So instead,
Try asking directly for what you need. Could you possibly explain that again, please? Or, I'm not sure I follow that point. Could you clarify? It's confident, it's direct.
okay. And the big one, sorry for my bad English.
Oh, please, everyone stop saying that. It completely undermines all the hard work you're putting in.
Right. It focuses on perceived flaws.
Exactly. Replace it with something positive, or at least neutral and proactive. English isn't my first language, but I'm doing my best. Or, thanks for your patience with my English. I'm still learning. It invites support, not pity. It's empowering.
Totally agree. What about worrying you're bothering someone? That sorry to bother you intro.
Yeah, just ask directly if it's a good time. Is now a good time for a quick question? Or, do you have a moment when I could run something by you? It respects their time while being assertive about your need.
Okay. And when you have made a mistake, but you're fixing it, instead of just, I'm sorry I made a mistake.
Own it and offer the solution. Ah, you're right. That was my mistake. Let me correct that right away. Or, good catch. That was my error. I'll fix it now. Solution focused, competent. These little shifts, they really add up. They change how fluent, how confident, how capable you sound.
Okay, let's try and wrap this up then. The core idea, the big takeaway from this deep dive, seems to be about being really conscious, really intentional with our words, moving beyond that automatic, I'm sorry,
Mm,
and realizing how much that deliberate shift can boost, well, everything. Your confidence, how professional you seem, how competent people think you are.
absolutely. What's become really clear, I think, is that using these different phrases isn't just about sounding better. It leads to clear communication. It shows more emotional nuance, more precision, like we saw with Emily in her email, or Jason handling that Wi-Fi glitch. Choosing the right words helps you come across as calm, professional, capable, even when things go slightly wrong. It works across so many real-life situations.
Right. So just to quickly recap the kinds of alternatives we've touched on, we talked about formal phrases like my apologies or I regret that. We looked at acknowledging small accidental things with I didn't mean to, navigating spaces, or interrupting with pardon me, excuse me, showing gratitude for waiting with thanks for your patience.
hmm Taking clear ownership with, that was my fault. Expressing deeper remorse with, please forgive me. Showing empathy, like, I understand how you feel, or that sounds hard. Reflecting on past errors with, I shouldn't have done that. And clarifying intent versus impact with, that was unintentional. It's quite a range.
It really is.
But maybe the most crucial takeaway, the sort of guiding principle here, is knowing when not to apologize at all. Seriously. You don't need to say sorry for just asking a question or asking for help or, taking up space in the world.
Or having an accent.
Absolutely. Or just not knowing something yet. That's all part of learning and communicating. So swap, sorry, I don't understand. Can you explain that again? Swap, sorry for my bad English. I'm still learning. I'll try my best. Remember, the goal is connection. It's communication. It's not about achieving some mythical perfection or constantly putting yourself down.
That's a really strong note to end on. It leaves you thinking, doesn't it? Your words have this incredible power to shape how people see you. So maybe take a moment to think about what stood out most to you from our chat today. Which of these alternatives resonated? How could you start weaving them into your own conversations? Maybe starting tomorrow. Think about those times you might have defaulted to, I'm sorry. What could you say instead? How could that small change empower you to communicate with, well, more clarity, more confidence, and maybe even a bit more class?